Everybody got your Eagles green on? You know, I read a poll. Only 16% of the people in the country were pulling for the New England Patriots. And most of those were folks who started out in New England to begin with, then dispersed throughout the United States. The Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles, were the odds-on favorites last night. And, well, they pulled through. Now, I just, for the record, want to state that...
that I said the Eagles were going to win?
Well, that I said the Eagles were going to win. And Russell said the Eagles were going to win.
You don't count because you didn't watch it.
Of course I didn't watch it.
All year. I mean...
Of course I didn't watch it, but all I did was analyze what the Eagles... I took into account records, I took into account defensive stats, and I took into account offensive stats. The only question mark was Nick Foles. And judging by the stats that I saw last night, I mean, here are the headlines that I read this morning, because I had to be somewhat intelligent and somewhat conversant to talk about this, having Russell Sherrill being the sports director and the program director of the station. I had to have some information to come to the table with. And so I noticed it blew away offensive yards for a Super Bowl. It was relatively penalty-free. Russell just informed me there was only one punt the entire game, which indicates to me it was a score fest, and that the defenses weren't pivotal until, of course, another headline, until the end of the game, where the Eagles finally got to Brady and caused him to cough up the football. And that turned out to be a difference maker. My father-in-law had watched it and was trying to convey to me the last series of the game where Tom Brady just seemed to be, where did he start out, Russell? It was pretty deep in his own end, right? He had 91 yards to go. It was a 9-yard line is where he started, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he started on the 9-yard line, and then that was pretty tall order with only, a minute left or something like that, if I remember what I read correctly. So anyway, Philadelphia went into to riot mode. A lot of people were betting on the over-under on how many couches they would see burning in the streets of Philadelphia. But there you go. So and it was pretty raucous, and still is, I think, as the sun comes up today, right, in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's for a victory. Can you imagine what a loss would have looked like?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. You have any takeaways you want to highlight?
Just great coaching. Great coaching.
How so?
The game plan by Coach Doug Peterson to be aggressive, to mix up the run pass options, to utilize their running game and sustain drives and dominate the time of possession in this football game where they had the ball for almost 9 to 10 minutes more than New England had it. That was huge. And then the fourth down calls, and especially the one where on the eventual drive that put Philadelphia up for good,
mm-hmm.
They went for it there was lots of time. There was a good 5-6 minutes left in the game, Chris, and they went for it on fourth down on their own 45-yard line.
Oh, there's
a lot
gutsy,
of coaches
man.
In the league that would have punted that ball right there.
That's gutsy. That's good. Now, I heard there were two controversial calls. One, which I watched the replay, and that was a catch. Because that was the last Philadelphia touchdown.
Okay, that was the Zach Ertz one. The game, the one that put him in. Absolutely, that was the catch. He took 3 full steps
before he even.
Then he lunged
extended
into the end zone.
Yeah.
He'd already become a runner.
Yep.
I don't know why it took them so long to review that.
I wonder how many Steelers fans were.
Oh my gosh, I was coughing it up right there. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! You got to be kidding me!" And then there was another one with Corey Clement that
was not a catch.
That could have gone either way, but I don't think they had enough conclusive evidence. And I really, really do believe that the league, when they looked at that and saw that, given all the criticism that they have received, and rightfully so, involving games where New England has been the beneficiary of touchdown calls that have been taken away. There was in the Texans game, the Jets game, and then, of course, the Steelers game where they got robbed. Yep. That would have changed the whole landscape of the playoffs as far as the AFC goes, as far as I'm concerned.
But he's not bitter.
I think they really, not at all. I think that the league sat there and said, you know what, there's just not enough conclusive evidence to overturn this. We can't do this right now. We cannot do this and let the Patriots be the beneficiary of this yet again.
Right. No, I think that if the refs let them play, they let them play. And like I said, the replays, the questionable calls, I think the first catch wasn't. Second catch was. Ernst, that was, as you say, was it 3 full steps? I didn't know. I thought it was 2.5.
Oh, no, he took 3 full steps. It was catch, 1, 2, 3, lunge into the end zone. I'm sorry, he became a runner at that point.
That was the process. Yeah, that's the full process. And you know, what happened to this football move standard? Where'd that go? Because that's 1, 2, 3 football moves as far as I'm concerned. So
I agree. And that whole football move standard, that went out the window when they put in this whole new catch rule into place.
Now the good news is, folks, is when the XFL comes online and supplants the NFL as the number 1 football league in the country.
Okay.
They'll have all this stuff already worked out. It's going to be and you know what? No. Now, let me ask you this. You watched the whole game, I'm assuming. So
yes.
Did anybody kneel for the national anthem?
No. And the national anthem was done beautifully by Pink.
By Pink. I heard. Now, that was a headline on Drudge.
She knocked it out of the park.
Oh, all right. Well,
and nobody took a knee. If they did, you didn't see it.
Okay. All right. Well, and again, I think that was by design. A lot of,
but it didn't look like it when they showed the stadium. You could see it pan out. Everything, it looked like everybody was standing side by side, hand over heart.
Okay, all right. Well, we shall see if, along with the catch rules, the NFL tackles the anti-American protests in the offseason. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. I know many of you want to review, and you guys have seen all the coverage over the weekend on the release of the FISA Memo. And the Democrats, their de-evolution on this has been something to behold. First, we were told that we can't see this memo, the American people, because it would compromise sources and methods. And it would put our intelligence agencies at risk. Then we were told the contents contained inside of the FISA memo would put national security at risk. Then it was released. And then we read it, and I got to tell you, it was worse than I thought it was going to be. As far as the level of the Obama era, I mean, we all knew about the IRS and the level of corruption there. That translated, as I feared, and as many of you know, I believe 100% into other areas of our government where heretofore was never acceptable, i.e. our intelligence agencies. So after its release, then Democrats hit the airwaves to say, oh, this is nothing. It's a big nothing. But see, all these Democrats who were talking before, they had seen it. So we went from compromising sources and methods to compromising national security to, oh, this is nothing. All the Democrats who have seen the memo on the House side were saying this. Now, there are some headlines we got to go through. The House Intelligence Committee that released this had some key points and some takeaways. And the synopsis is done here by the Washington Examiner. Steele dossier formed an essential part of the initial and all 3 renewal FISA applications against Carter Page. Carter Page was this know-nothing guy who did have a past with the Russians, and that was okay because, you see, the Russians, before the era of Obama, were somewhat allied. Now, they invaded Georgia against our wishes, and Georgia was an ally, and we didn't like that very much, and that was the beginning of the end. The timidity of the Bush administration dealing with the ever-aggressive Vladimir Putin. And then Barack Obama completely surrendered for 8 years. Vladimir Putin knew he had the run of his region and that Barack Obama wouldn't lift a finger to stop him. And as a matter of fact, Barack Obama was going to take away any deterrence to the Russians by getting rid of defensive missile systems in Eastern Europe. So anyway, Carter Page had dealings, as had many Americans. We by the way, folks, you may forget, but we have a cooperative deal with the Russians right now for the International Space Station. We do joint operations with them. Our own NASA does for the ISS. So there's still a level of cooperation that existed before Putin started sinking his meat hooks back into the Kremlin. So we learned that the discredited Trump dossier was the basis for all of the FISA renewals. Now, there was another key point, and maybe they get into this in the further bullet points here. I can't remember because I only read over this once. That the Trump dossier was bought and paid for by the Democrat National Committee and by Hillary Clinton's campaign. That fact was not released to the FISA judges at any time. That fact was not released to them. They thought it was. Now, according to one Democrat that I saw on Fox News Sunday yesterday, the judges allegedly, and I can't confirm this, he says it. And if it's a Democrat saying it, it's probably a lie. He says that the judges were told of the quote, political nature of the Trump dossier. And then when pressed, Chris Wallace said, wait a minute, did the judge get told it was generated and paid for by the Democrat National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign? Well, Chris, they didn't need to know that, he said. I'm paraphrasing. He's talking to Chris Wallace. He didn't need to know that. Oh, they didn't. In a presidential election, the Democrat Party and the Democrat Party's candidate paid Russians for this fake Trump dossier, and the FISA judge, using it as the predicate to spy on Americans and violate Americans' constitutional rights, didn't need to know. They just needed to know it was political somehow. I'm sorry, folks. To me, that's obfuscation. To me, that's a lie. And to me, the Democrats know it. There are more talking points on this, and we'll get into it. Coming up, the Chris Salcedo Show, and your calls, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. I got to tell you, the Democrats look pathetic this weekend. They really did. They looked disheveled. They looked lost. They couldn't stay on message. And their main objective was to make sure you didn't see the details inside of this memo. And what about their memo? What kind of care did they want to take with their memo? Because now we're also told there's a step 4. Now that this memo has come out, where's our memo? Well, I thought you said it was national security and sources and methods. Is it that? Or is it you just want your political spin to muddy the waters? 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. It's the Salcedo Show. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show. I am your liberty-loving Latino. Do not confuse me with loudmouth leftist Latinos out there. I actually love the country. My country, the United States of America. All right, more headlines from this FISA memo business. Now, Russell and I were just talking in the break about the Democrats wanting to come out and the idea that they wanted to release their own report. Now, the Republicans' report had to go through a process, had to be scrubbed, had to make sure that there were no national security secrets put out. Democrats said, we want you to skip all of that in our memo and just release it. Now, this shows you the level of care that Democrats take with our national security, which is to say they don't care at all. All they want is their political spin out there. And they're going to try to justify. And basically what they're going to say is, everything the Republicans said was a lie, because you and I have no way of knowing, right? We weren't there. We didn't see the FISA process because it's a secretive process, and the Democrats know this. So at the end of the day, what the Democrats are banking on is that their voters will believe them, the Republican voters will believe them, and everybody will go back to their corners and the damage won't be done and they won't be held accountable. So now what I think needs to happen is the Republican Party needs to make sure, and the president needs to make sure, that the supporting documentation for all of their allegations inside of this FISA memo are backed up. So that the Democrats, when their report comes out, they can be refuted easily. Here are some of the other bullet points. Andrew McCabe confirmed that no FISA warrant would have been sought from the FISA court without the Steele dossier information, which we all know the vast majority of it was bogus, which we all know the entirety was paid for by the Democrats and Hillary Clinton to the Russians through Fusion GPS. Now, just because you have an intermediary between your cash and you doesn't exonerate you from the law. And it's illegal for information to be purchased from a foreign entity in a political campaign. The only entity that we know of that has paid, entities, I should say, that has paid for information from the Russian government pertaining to the 2016 campaign is Hillary Clinton, the DNC. Now, there were a couple of folks over the weekend, Dick Durbin among them, trying to claim that the Republicans were the ones who started paying for this and the Democrats finished it. It's a complete and utter lie. But he tried to get away with it on CNN. Listen.
Would you grant the point that the DNC and the Clinton campaign should have disclosed much earlier than they did to the public that they actually funded this dossier?
Of course, you know as well, Jake, that the actual political motivation and beginning of this was on the Republican side.
That was during. See how he's trying to muddy the waters? Fusion GPS was used during the Republican primaries, but none of their information was purchased through Christopher Steele or purchased through the Russians. And Dick Durbin knows it. Dick Durbin knows the only illegality that happened that we know of so far has been the Democrat National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they're still walking around, and they're not under investigation so far as we know. So here's Dick Durbin trying to muddy the waters, saying, well, basically, the Republicans used Fusion GPS during their primaries. Thus, that means they started this whole thing on Donald Trump. Problem was, the Russians weren't accessed. And anti-Trump Christopher Steele was not accessed by the Republicans.
It was then switched over where there was Democratic funding. It really goes to the credibility, but that is an issue that the judge in issuing the FISA warrant takes into consideration, and ultimately some other trier effect will as well. But to say now that we can say, as the president said, it's all over, stop the investigation, I'm above the law, and I shouldn't be investigated any further.
Well, that's not what he said. He didn't say he was above the law, Dick Durbin. He said the entire predicate for the investigation was based on a lie, the Trump dossier that your political party paid for, sir. That's what he said. Now, I know that you Democrats are into ill-gotten gains. I get it. But for Donald Trump to come out and say, hey, look, the entire basis of this investigation is based on a discredited dossier the Democrats and Hillary paid for, come on. That's not him saying he's above the law. That's him saying that the Democrats are abusing the law.
That is an extreme position, and it's inconsistent with one of the fundamental rules of law in this country.
Well, I think in point of fact, the Opposition Research Project was funded by Republicans, but the Steele dossier per se was funded by Democrats, but this appears to be a dry well, so I'm going to move on.
Yes, dry well, because when a Democrat lies on CNN, Jake Tapper says, well, dry well, let's move on. Let's not take Dick Durbin to task. Let's not take Dick Durbin and really put him to the carpet. Let's not nail his shoulders to the carpet, shall we? We don't want to make it too uncomfortable for the Democrats now, do we, Jake Tapper? No, we just got to move on. No, by the way, no Republican would be afforded that luxury in Jake Tapper's interview cage. The 4 FISA surveillance applications were signed by, in various combinations, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Dana Bonte, and Rod Rosenstein. Now, I don't know who Dana is. That was a new name to me. But we know James Comey very well, the former FBI director, Leaky Comey. We know Andrew McCabe, the now former deputy director of the FBI. And we know Sally Yates, she was the one who openly defied Donald Trump and in his temporary travel ban to the United States, wouldn't enforce it, defied the president, and was fired for her trouble, which was appropriate. And Rod Rosenstein, the treacherous deputy attorney general, who should be fired today, who should have been fired yesterday, but to be quite frank. This guy, let's not forget who Rod Rosenstein is, folks. This is the guy who put his name on a letter to the president of the United States saying he recommended James Comey's firing. And then when the president fired James Comey, turned around and said, well, gee, that looks kind of fishy. I think we're going to have to open up an investigation on you, Mr. Trump, the special counsel. Because that smells like obstruction of justice to me, even though he himself recommended to Trump that the James Comey be fired. Let that sink in. Nobody reports on that. Chris Wallace this weekend didn't report on it. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into some of the media coverage coming up here on the Chris Salcedo Show. And coming up, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, CIA trained Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Got a couple more bullet points I want to go over with you. Make sure you guys have all the information you possibly can, because I know a lot of your liberal friends are going to be out there saying, oh, it was the nothing burger. Well, let me say, this is the most filling nothing burger I've had in my entire life. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV, and the Chris Salcedo Show players, they took notice of the memo. They come up next on the Chris Salcedo Show. All right, here we go. Hour 2 of the Chris Salcedo Show underway. Coming up, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, CIA trained Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Want to get his take on the memo. I want to get you guys a couple other bullet points, and then the Chris Salcedo Show players have been very busy bees over the weekend in reaction to the release of the FISA memo. We mentioned to you that the FISA surveillance memos spying on Americans, suspending their constitutional rights, were signed off on by Comey, McCabe, Yates, and Rosenstein. The Dirty Four. And this Dana Bonte, who I don't know. The FBI authorized payments to Steele for the work on the dossier. The FBI did pay Christopher Steele, a professed anti-Trumper. He was, quote, desperate not to have Trump be president of the United States. This former MI6 agent. The FBI terminated its agreement with Steele in late October when it learned by reading in an article in Mother Jones that Steele was talking to the press. All of the press accounts about the dossier were leaked to them by Christopher Steele. So Catherine Herridge called this on Monday from Fox News, circular reporting. Here's the guy. He creates a memo full of fake garbage. He leaks the memo to the press. The press starts saying, hey, we're hearing Obama government about this memo. What can you tell us about it? And then they're pressed and they're pressed and they're pressed. And then, wink, wink, nod, nod from the Obama administration. Oh, well, we can't comment on this. Or we can't believe. They just drag it out. That was the intent. So he created his own story, hence the term circular reporting. Political origins of the Steele dossier were known to senior DOJ and FBI officials. Now, this is key. The political origins, meaning it was bought and paid for by the DNC and by Hillary Clinton's campaign. They did not share these facts with the FISA court judges. Now, this was asked, what was it, on Monday? Or not Monday, must have been last week, middle of the week, by, I think it was JT right here on this program. Who are these judges? And once these judges have it confirmed that the Department of Justice and the FBI lied to them by omission, why won't these judges haul these individuals up before their court and have them pay the piper? Is there a provision in the FISA court laws that says if you lie to a FISA court judge that you are held accountable. This stuff I don't know. I'm going to probably ask Tony Shaffer about this. But you would think you lie to a FISA court judge, you lie to any judge, and there's a penalty to pay. Unless you're an anti-Trump, never Trump leftist, like McCabe, Comey, Rosenstein, Yates, then you get off scot-free? Is that what I'm to understand? That these FISA court judges don't really give a damn about your Fourth Amendment rights. That really the political motivation was all they really cared about. Yeah, it helped get rid of Trump. We'll just look the other way on not being told the truth to suspend Americans' constitutional protections. These are questions that have to be answered. DOJ official Bruce Orr. You guys remember him? Bruce Orr held 2 positions inside of the Obama DOJ, the Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder DOJ. He met with Christopher Steele beginning in the summer of 2016 and relayed to the DOJ information about Steele's bias, that he hated Trump. Steele told Orr that he was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected president and was passionate about him not becoming president. Now, and something that you ought to know as well is that when the FBI stopped paying Christopher Steele for this fake information, Christopher Steele kept up his relationship with Bob Orr and kept on feeding false information to Orr, who continued to feed it to the FBI. And by the way, Fusion GPS employed Bruce Orr's wife. Gave her money. Isn't that interesting? But the Democrats are saying, oh, this is all just a big coinky dink, and they're going to come up and say, there's nothing nefarious here. There's nothing to see here. Look at and folks, they have, and I said this in the first hour, I'm going to repeat it. They went from this is going to damage national security, this is going to compromise national sources and methods, to now that it's released, oh, it's nothing. Oh, but we want to have our political spin on it. And by the way, we don't want our documents to be scrubbed or vetted to see if we violate national security or sources and methods. That's what the Democrats have been saying all weekend long. We want our memo out. Well, it's got to go through the same process the Republican memo went through. Yours wasn't even done when the Republicans were was getting to be released. So, at any rate, those are some of the bullet points that we found out. And this memo confirmed, let me just say it was worse than I thought. The level of corruption from the Obama era. This got the Chris Salcedo Show players thinking over the weekend, and they decided to put together, a little something they call Finding Memo.
Coming this summer from Disney Pixar, Finding Memo.
Didn't you get the memo?
It's a story about a man on a mission.
Together, we will make America great again.
In search of 30,000 missing emails.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails.
And the devious forces plotting against him. Join a cast who are stars in their own minds. Crooked Rod Rosenstein.
I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart and I want respect.
Hillary Clinton.
I am a nasty woman.
Senator Chuck Schumer.
Stand up, Chuck. Let him see you.
Can you remind me what I pay you people for? Honestly, throw me a bone here. Oh, hell, let's just do what we always do. Hijack some nuclear weapons and hold the world hostage.
I tell you what, stand up for Chuck.
Bob Mueller.
You can't handle the truth.
And the leaky James Comey.
I shall call him Squishy, and he shall be mine, and he shall be my Squishy.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
That's Squishy.
It's the blockbuster hit of the summer, Finding Memo.
Didn't you get the memo?
Coming to Fort Leavenworth, July 4th.
It's going to be a blockbuster, folks. I predict. You know, it's going to be the Solo movie in May, the new Star Wars movie, and then it's going to be Finding Memo. What do you think, Russell? 2 must-sees, I think. I don't know. I'm just saying. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Stars in their own mind. And you know what? That's what politics is. I mean, how many times have you ever heard Rush Limbaugh say that, politics is Hollywood for the ugly? 281-558. Boy, if any of you have seen the Chris Salcedo Show Facebook page, I want you guys to not let your friends catch TDS. You got to go to the Chris Salcedo Show Facebook page and you will see Nancy Pelosi is in stage 4 of TDS. It's a ravaging disease, as you will see by evidence of what has gone on with Nancy Pelosi. Trump derangement syndrome is it does take its toll, ladies and gentlemen. So when you go to Chris Salcedo Show Facebook page, it's 2 posts down, and you will see the results of Trump derangement syndrome. Don't let this be you or anybody you love. By the way, the post that picture appears under is right under Jemele Hill. Russell, do you remember who Jemele Hill is?
Yeah, she's with ESPN.
Well, yes, she used to have a show on ESPN. Do you remember that? She had
does she not still have the evening primetime Sports Center show?
She was removed.
When did this happen?
A couple weeks ago, I remember reading.
Well, see, I don't watch Sports Center anymore because of all the liberal bias that they spew out of their mouths on that program now. So I turned off on that a long time ago.
Now, while I tell the folks the latest, why don't you just confirm that I'm, because I don't want to say that I think she was. I read a headline: Jemele Hill removed from Sports Center, and I think it's true because Fox News is reporting Jemele Hill as a writer. They don't report her as an anchor.
Okay.
Anti-Trump ESPN writer. She was demoted to a writer. Jemele Hill says President Trump uses racial pornography to stoke his base. She was removed by all indications because of her political bias and the flack that ESPN was getting because of people like her. And she still keeps it up, saying that he says he utters racial pornography. What has he said that is racial pornography? I mean, I don't know what these. He says God bless you, and that's going to be racism, because these people are so desperate to be victims. Jemele Hill, so desperate to be a victim. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. I've got more stuff to share with you about the bias of the press in covering this memo. And I'm sad to say I've got to use Chris Wallace as an example. He's not the only one, but he's the one I watch most religiously. So he's going to be our poster child today of really biased coverage. I know it's hard for everybody to believe from the press about the GOP memo. Had this been the Democrat memo, and trust me, this is going to happen, folks. When the Democrats release theirs, it'll be treated the exact 180, a complete 180 from how the Republican memo is being treated. They will regard the Democrat version as gospel and the Republican version as, just something to be ignored. 281-558-5738. It's Chris Salcedo Show. Back in 2 shakes. Happy Monday, everybody, on the Voice of Texas. Welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. By the way, if you get on the program, I just want to remind everybody, chances are you're going to be on TV later tonight on the Vida television network, Roku and Fire Stick. That's where you can find their programming. They're also live. You have friends in South Carolina. You can call them up and say, hey, I'm going to be on the Vida television network, their broadcast out there in that neck of the woods. The Vida, VIDA television network. Let's get out the phones. TJ, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. Glad you called in.
Hey, Chris, what's up, man?
How you doing, man?
I'm good. Hey, you remember I called you last week, I don't think it was Thursday or Friday, and told you how I wanted these memos, how much I want these memos to come out.
Right.
I knew it would be a spectacular fail. And, boy, look what has happened. Even Trey Gowdy, your own guy, was like, there's nothing in here to disrupt Mueller's investigation. We should keep going. 100%.
Well, that wasn't the point. The point of the memo wasn't to disrupt the Mueller investigation.
Oh, yes, it is. Why did he come out and say he's vindicated? He said he's vindicated.
I know. We already said the president was eager to defend himself, and I think there is a case to be made that the entire premise of the investigation, which was that. Well, let me just finish. He is under the impression that the entire premise for the investigation, which was based on the Trump dossier, which has been disproven and debunked, that was the reason why this whole investigation was launched to begin with, back during the Obama era, and he's right about that. So what we see here is, and the way I've always looked at it, is that Barack Obama was such a corrupt guy that he corrupted every segment of our government. And when you have, wait a minute. When you have what he did with the IRS happening to our intelligence agencies, when all they got to do, let's just put it this way, TJ, let's say somebody wanted to get you out of the way. All they'd have to do is come up with a fake document that says you're a child molester, or say that you are some sort of a reprobate. Then they shop that around. Even none of it's true. All they got to do is shop it around, get it up there and get it in front of a FISA judge. Then all of a sudden your life's under a microscope. Your Fourth Amendment protections go away. And let's just say a Republican did it to you. Why would you support Barack Obama suspending people's Fourth Amendment protections, but you think that if a Republican was going to do it to you, you'd be upset about it? Now, why would you be okay with Barack Obama doing it?
I'm not okay with anyone doing it. There's
of course,
no
you just said,
evidence
wait a
that he
minute.
did it.
You just
There's
said.
No evidence that he did it.
I beg your pardon?
There is no evidence that happened.
Yeah, whoa. There is evidence. The Trump dossier has been thoroughly discredited, and it was used as the basis for FISA warrants, for renewals of the FISA warrants. We know this already.
Also, Papadopoulos. That's the reason why the FISA warrant was issued.
No. Andrew McCabe stated in his interview that was made public that there would be no FISA warrants if it weren't for the fake Trump dossier.
Why wouldn't they quote what he said? Why wouldn't they quote his words? Because he didn't say it. They surmised that. They did not quote Andrew McCabe.
Well,
Look at it.
So they didn't go word for word. Is that what you're saying?
No. It has to be word for word.
Okay. And I want you to hold on, TJ. I want you to remember that, because you're saying it has to be word for word, right? Well, why is it?
Under oath, yes.
Well, wait a minute. You're saying that nothing was under oath because this was a memo that was declassified. But what you're saying is it has to be word for word. The Democrat on Fox News Sunday this weekend said that the judges were made aware of the political nature of the Trump dossier. However, he also confirmed that the FISA judges never knew that they were paid for by the Department of Justice and by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Those exact words were never used by those who are going to bat for the Democrats inside of the DOJ. Now, why is that okay?
Okay, what else?
No. You know, wait a minute. Hold on. Don't get off topic. I asked you a specific question. If exact words matter, then why were not these judges told on those exact words, this dossier that we're using was paid for to Russians by the DNC and by the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Chris, I can't answer that question. But
Now,
I
can answer the question for you.
These are political.
Now, why do you?
They told him,
well, hold on.
politically motivated.
TJ.
They told him that.
Yeah, politically motivated. But you said exact words should be used. Why did the Democrats? I believe they were Democrats in the intelligence agencies. Why did the Democrats withhold the information that it was paid for by the DNC and by the Hillary Clinton campaign to the FISA judges?
Chris,
I'm asking you a question. Hold on, TJ.
Give me a second to answer. When you're talking about McCabe, you're talking about what a person actually said, what one person actually said. Now, with the other things, you're talking about kind of like a process. Like, did they do this or did they say it? It's totally different. This is one individual.
No, hold on. TJ, I can't allow you to come on the air and distort what the FISA court is supposed to do. The FISA court authorizes surveillance of our foreign apparatus to surveil American citizens, in essence, having their own government used against them. If these FISA judges were not giving complete information, they deserved complete information, and it was withheld. The fact that it was withheld from them is what's germane to this. And it goes right back to my original conversation. If you're going to sit there and say that it's okay to lie to a FISA court judge to get a political outcome, this is why I believe the Republican memo was so needed. And you're not addressing the question. Again, why is it okay in your mind not to tell not one, but 4 FISA court judges that this memo was paid for by the Democrats and by the Hillary Clinton campaign?
It was politically motivated. Hey, judges,
what does that mean? Wait a minute. Whoa. Wait a minute. That could mean anything. That could have meant John McCain paid for it.
Why did the judges ask? Why didn't they say, you know what? Where'd they come from?
The burden. Wait a minute. The burden of proof. Hold on. Wait a minute. The burden of proof is not on the judges. The FISA court is set up in that they are to trust that the intelligence agencies are coming to the table with all of the facts. You can't leave out relevant facts and then ask to violate an American's constitutional protections. You can't do that. So what you're saying is it's okay to leave out information to hurt Trump, but it's not okay to leave out information when it can serve us to hurt Trump. TJ, you get a double standard, man. You got a double standard.
Chris, if you were the judge, wouldn't you say if somebody said, you know what, this is politically motivated? My next question would be, okay, well,
what do you mean by that?
I'm a judge. I should know all
Yeah,
this.
what do you mean by that? But see, the FISA courts operate differently than a regular court. The FISA courts operate on they tell us they have a rigorous process to go through with all of the intelligence that's presented by, we're supposed to believe, people in good faith looking out for the well-being of the United States. Now, I believe that Andrew McCabe believed that Donald Trump was a menace and shouldn't be president. Now, I believe that Rod Rosenstein believes that Donald Trump is a menace and shouldn't be president. I know that James Comey believes that Donald Trump is a menace and shouldn't be president. And this is probably what they told themselves when they decided to lie to a FISA court judge 4 times and not tell them that
Trump people. These are Trump. Hey,
no, they're not. No, they're not.
Chris, I know you don't have a lot of time, but I know y'all want to be fair and balanced. So in the interest of being right, Jamel Hill, who was an ESPN anchor, she asked to go back to print journalism so her platform will be bigger.
That's the story that came out. That's the story that came out. That was the story that came out about Jamel Hill.
No.
She was allowed to resign. So let me get this straight. So she had a successful program on television that was busting it up in the ratings, and she asked to be demoted.
They tried to get her to stay, Chris.
TJ, I appreciate the call. I really do. Thank you very much. 281-5. Because that happens all the time, folks. You always leave your successful TV positions to take lesser paid positions and less exposure positions. That happens all the time. I'm telling you. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KACV. Colonel Tony Shaffer up next on The Voice. Let's get out to our guest today, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, CIA-trained, former senior intelligence officer, and New York Times best-selling author. The latest book is called The Last Line. He's a senior fellow with both the London Center for Policy Research and the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Colonel, I think it's the first time we've talked to you in the new year, so Happy New Year, sir.
Hey, Happy New Year. Good to be on. Thanks for having me.
Look, we're gonna focus on Brennan, some things he said over the weekend. I'll be playing some of this, starting and stopping and getting your take on several points he brought up on NBC. But first off, I just want to get your overall impression of the Republican memo, what it did and what it didn't do.
Well, the two things it did do was outline the fact that there was massive and detailed abuse of the FISA system using what we know now was essentially Russian propaganda. Now, think about this, Chris. The very people who are now investigating Russian collusion were the ones who were the conduit for it. So that's the first thing it does. Secondly, it shows that Hillary Clinton and her minions were completely and I would say inexorably linked to Obama administration and using the Obama administration's official mechanisms as part of supporting her campaign, which is all these things are completely illegal. So what we don't still know is exactly what was on the warrants, and we still don't completely know how Mike Flynn got wrapped up in all this because the Mike Flynn stuff is untouched. I do understand from talking to folks close to that issue. New information is coming out on that soon about how that happened, but that's a completely different set of wrongdoing. But it all goes back to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's team.
Yeah, it bears pointing out the only folks to have paid for information from the Russians was the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and that is illegal. That's illegal.
That's completely illegal. You cannot use campaign funds in any way to pay for foreign intelligence or foreign sources of information on candidates. And secondly, to this point of James Comey being this pillar of supposedly integrity, he's the man who was essentially the vector for Russian disinformation. He was too stupid to recognize what was going on, that they were being played. And think about this, Chris. He's supposed to be the ultimate counterintelligence guru of the nation, and he gets completely played by the Russians. So not only is this bad from the political perspective, this shows this guy should never have been given a badge ever. He is that stupid.
Yeah, he's a star in his own mind, that's for sure. Let's turn to another one of these people I know you know very well, probably cut from the same cloth as James Comey is John Brennan, former CIA director. Right. He's on Meet the Press this weekend, and he has several points I want you to address directly. Here he is. There's point one.
When did you first learn of the so-called Steele dossier and what Christopher Steele was doing?
Well, it was not a very well-kept secret among press circles for several months before it came out. And it was in late summer of 2016 when there were some individuals from the various U.S. news outlets who asked me about my familiarity with it. And I had heard just snippets about it. I did not know what was in there. I did not see it until later in that year. I think it was in December.
First off, do we buy that at all?
No, look, Jim Clapper and James Comey both lied under oath on this issue. I would expect nothing different from this man. Come on, think about it for yourself, Chris. If you're the director of CIA, you hear a rumor of this, you're just going to ignore it till December. Come on. I mean, think about it.
Well, hey, you know what? If an MI6, a former MI6 operative is talking to the American press, which Catherine Herridge brilliantly outlined this on Friday as circular reporting. Right. Here's the MI6 guy leaking to the American press. The American press starts conveniently knocking on the door of Mr. Brennan, and Mr. Brennan gets to feign complete ignorance. It doesn't pass the smell test.
Right. And the other thing is Brennan was, I think, part of the team behind the scenes working to facilitate this all being fed to the right places. I don't think he was some innocent bystander. Again, he, like Comey and all the other folks, ought to be investigated deeply for their, I suspect he was one of the first guys to know about it and one of the first guys to start passing it around.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer is our guest right now, folks. Former CIA-trained intelligence officer and a best-selling author. Here's point two that Brennan made on Meet the Press.
But I was unaware of the provenance of it as well as what was in it. And it did not play any role whatsoever in the intelligence community assessment that was done, that was presented to then President Obama and then President-elect Trump.
Wait a minute. This was the entire basis of the entire investigation into Donald Trump.
Right. This, again, goes into the realm of science fiction. He is completely lying because there was no other evidence of any sort that said that the Russians were being met with or discussed anything regarding Trump. And there's some evidence, obviously, that they were doing, they bought $75,000 of Facebook ads. Really? That, and the other thing, Chris, the Russians are always out to do anything they can to disrupt. And frankly, the Democrats gave them a home run here. Think about it. The very disinformation they sent via Steele has resulted in the continued disruption of our political process. So they've won, and they've won because of because of Brennan, Clapper, Clinton, Obama, and all the useful idiots that they turned out to be for the Russians.
Okay, here's the last point he makes.
How was the Steele dossier treated?
How
did you treat it? You said you looked at it in December. I assume it was obviously looked at by the FBI. We've now learned they've tried to confirm some of it and have had some success. Some not yet. They say it's unconfirmed, but that's about it.
Well, there were things in that dossier that made me wonder whether or not they were in fact accurate and true. And I do think it was up to the FBI to see whether or not they could verify any of it. I think Jim Comey has said that it contained salacious and unverified information. Just because it was unverified didn't mean it wasn't true.
So you see, it's the seriousness of the charge, according to the former CIA director.
Again, now this was disinformation. This is Russia's clear shot to do everything they can to disrupt and cause havoc in our elections. And we have such idiots in our intelligence community to represent exactly what the Russians are trying to do like that. And frankly, Chris, you and your audience, I have no idea what they're talking about regarding, quote unquote, verification of anything in that dossier, anything. And so this is how far the left and the mainstream media is going. Unless someone is actually paying attention, reading what the FBI says, someone will walk away from that interview thinking, oh, my God, there's still something out there. Mm-hmm. That's how deceptive these people are.
Yeah, and last thing, Britt Hume asked over the weekend on Twitter, and I saw this, that as Brennan states, everything was so ironclad, the Trump dossier wasn't needed to open this investigation. If that's true, Britt had observed, then why would you need the dossier according to the FISA memo, and why would you need a Yahoo News story to buttress your FISA warrant request, number one? Number two, Democrats like Eric Swalwell from California admitted the FBI didn't tell the FISA judges that the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for the Russian document, because that would have been, in my mind, any FISA judge would have disqualified it right there.
They would have, and then obviously you're really, as you point out, we're talking about the Newsweek reporting, or I'm sorry, Michael Isikoff reporting, the Yahoo reporting was all completely circular. It was all from the same source trying to validate the same information. And no, any FISA judge worth his salt, had he been given that, would have said, no, this is not permissible. And I know from talking to the federal officers I know, and being involved in some of these sorts of things myself, you don't use press information, basic media information, for the very reason you just stated. You don't want to take something that may have been from the same source now you're trying to use to do something else. So the whole thing is completely rotten, completely corrupt. What else can I say?
Yeah, they're either very corrupt, or, as you allege, they're very stupid to not realize they're being played by Steele, the press, and others who had an agenda. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, everybody, CIA trained, former senior intelligence officer, and his book is The Last Line. Make sure you check it out. Colonel, always appreciate the visit.
Hey, Chris. Hey, and by the way, check out Nat Geo, Chain of Command. I'm one of the executive producers. It's on Monday nights at 9 p.m. So you guys would like that. It's about how President Trump allowed the military to go beat ISIS over the past year.
Right on, right. Well, you know what? We'll update your bio on that next time we get you on. Thanks, man.
Great. Okay. Hey, thanks.
And that's going to do it here for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide on the Vida Television Network. I want to remind everyone that I think I'm one of the few individuals on television who actually allows you to directly interact with me, unfiltered, live. All you got to do is call AM 700 KSEV 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. from the hours of 7:30 a.m. Eastern until 10 o'clock Eastern, and let your voice be heard. Maybe you don't think we covered something fairly, or maybe you don't think we've covered something enough. It's your chance to weigh in. You can also do so via social media. Go to chrissalcedo.com. All of our contact information is there, or you can do it live in real time during those same hours at Chris Salcedo TX. Even off hours, we respond to Twitter, and it's a good chance if you make a compelling argument, it'll be featured on the show if I'm not on the air at the time the following day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the Vida Television Network. We'll see you next time.